Hey everybody, it's Moose here, and I'm back again with another interview. I'm here with Starblast Studios. He is a stop motion animator who focuses mainly on Dragon Ball Z content, but he also does reviews, reactions, and many other types of content. So thank you, Starblast, for joining me.
I'm happy to be here, man. 100%. I've always seen a bunch of your interviews, with in the friend group and everyone. It's just like, you know, it's always been something that I've wanted to do, being one of these interviews. And I'm finally so happy to be here, get to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be. I'm glad to be that you're a part of it too, man. So going on to my very first question.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
about time.
Yeah,
About
yeah,
time.
definitely. This is long overdue. So yeah, going on my very first question is what got you into doing stop motion animation?
Okay, so there was a little bit of a process because initially when I first started off on the channel, so there was on my channel the main one which I privated right now because God I don't want people to see those absurdly embarrassing videos. I mean I can do that sometimes where I don't like no, I private it. So my very first video was actually a review of the Marvel Legends Century, and I just wanted to do initially. I feel like the idea on the channel was just mainly specifically going to be Marvel and Transformers,
Mm-hmm.
and Transformers was a big thing that I was into back in the day where I first created my channel, and it was one of the things that had influenced a lot of my childhood. I loved Transformers as a kid, and I went into so and also Dragon Ball is a really important part of my life as well. It became like growing up became more important than Transformers specifically for me because of how much it's also influenced a lot of how I am, like what I'm inspired by, what I'm passionate about and stuff. But the very first thing was Transformers, and sort of the thing is that really I think pushed it was to make me want to go and do stop motions was it was a mixture of two different people. So the very first guys was the different people around the time who were reviewing the Transformers Prime figures and whatnot, and there was this YouTuber named Emgo who would make these like skits and stuff with his Transformers, and I thought that was like really they were like really funny, they were really cool and entertaining. So that was sort of the idea. They all had I had like these videos on my channel. It was called Starscream News or whatever, and they were just completely like cringe. I didn't delete. I don't remember what happened to those actually. And they may have gotten deleted, but sort of the idea was Transformers. And the person that actually I think there was this YouTuber that got me like who helped me find the stop motions, and it was this YouTuber named Absurdly Awesome who did a bunch of his Transformers series. And there was a wide range of variety on his entire channel that it was very like lots of really nice parodies and stuff that he had on there, and a lot of it was Transformers. And so that was how I initially found the stop motion. Now around that sort of time when I was sort of starting out, because my very first stop motion was Iron Man versus Electro. It was just a couple of Marvel Legends I have. I was getting into Marvel Legends at that time, I believe. And eventually, like as I was getting into stuff, they happened to be going and releasing some of the earlier SH figure arts. Because I know you collect SH figure arts, you may know like at that point in time there was the Kid Gohan, like the Goku.
Right.
This might have been around the oh yeah, this was around the time where the Ultimate Gohan first came out. And see, I was at this place where I gathered up the group and I got my first Dragon Ball figures, and that's sort of how like I came about. And because of those stop motions of which I did, I managed to go and find a lot of different people within the community that also really like Dragon Ball and stop motions. But it was all at first the community I was in at the first community I was in was Marvel, and
Mm-hmm.
then later like I found the people who did Dragon Ball, and that's honestly just been the main focus because of how much stuff I've invested into it. And so that's initially how Dragon Ball. As a matter of fact, one more thing about it, the name Starblast was actually supposed to be a the name of my own like original Transformer. Like
Ah,
that's
okay.
that's actually so it was initially Starblast like 32 because I wanted to have like numbers on the end of my name. I don't remember where the 32 specifically came from, but eventually one of my friends, I believe it was either Minimix Animation or Evan Productions 2000. They said it'd be better if I changed it to something else. Like oh yeah, it was Minimix Animation. So like he told me like, hey, it'd be better if you change your name. So eventually, I took his advice. I thought the 32 was sort of cringe. Like the more that time went on, so I changed it to Starblast Studios, and it had a nice ring to it. I was more proud of that name than I was with Starblast 32. And so yeah, I think that pretty. I'm sorry, I went on a whole thing right there.
Oh no, you're
Yeah.
good. No, it's really interesting. I didn't know all of that about the whole backstory of the name, and the whole backstory of like how you got really into doing animation, and how you really got into the community itself. I think that's really really cool, and learning that more about you is really intriguing. Which actually kind of leads into going on to the question. I know you kind of semi answered it, but I just wanted to know is basically, since your main focus is Dragon Ball content, is what really got you into the Dragon Ball community? Because it's huge. It's a huge community of people, and like doing that. That being said, what got you into Dragon Ball in the first place, and what made you want to be like, I want to be a part of this community?
So yeah, what got me into Dragon Ball in the first? So that's okay. So is it? I'm sorry. Can you? So the question is how? So how did I get into Dragon Ball? What got me involved in a community?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So it's kind of like a two-part question. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Okay. So the first part of how I got into Dragon Ball. So back in the day, I was really, really into Yu-Gi-Oh, and one of the things I remember exactly what happened. So, I was really just into Yu-Gi-Oh. I loved the show. I loved the game. I loved a lot of things about it. And one of these days, I remember I was in my school library. I found this Yu-Gi-Oh manga, and I had no idea what it was. Well, actually, no, I did know what it was. It was basically telling the same story of the original Yu-Gi-Oh, but it had a lot of differences to it. And little did I know, it was actually like the true story of the original Yu-Gi-Oh before 4Kids came in with their own version and sort of changed stuff up to make it more I say quote unquote suitable for kids. And so reading that manga, I got like I was completely into it and stuff. And eventually I read all the mangas. I didn't have anything else to read. And so honestly, it was funny because I didn't want to try out any other stuff. I was really like, despite me knowing liking all these different shows, I didn't really like to getting into any new stuff as a kid. But one of these days happened when my mom, she noticed me. I was reading the same exact manga all over again. So she eventually she came home from the library. She brought me this manga called Dragon Ball Z. It was Volume 1, and I was really into it. Like I liked the story a lot. Like reading it and stuff. Like which honestly, granted, I was a little bit confused as to what exactly was going on. Because there's a person here, he can fly. What is this guy like? What are all these different things? It was clearly not the original start of the story, but it had stuff in there that had me, intrigued. I didn't really want to go back and read the old stuff, so I just kept on continuing on with the story, whatever. And then it all just sort of continued on from there, which is how I got into Dragon Ball. So how I got into the the community. I mean, obviously, I went into it led me into watching the anime, doing all these things. So how I got into the community was honestly how I got into the community was really interesting because I was really just growing up. I didn't really have a lot of access to the internet. I wasn't exactly as privileged as other people were to have their sort of phone which can do that. I was one of those kids growing up with the flip phone, so I really couldn't do that. So I honestly it's funny because I feel like I came into the community and found the community through the actual stop motion animations of which I did. I feel like those things because where I first did my first Dragon Ball stop motion, it was it was Gohan's rage or Gohan's anger or whatever. It was like a little thing. And I remember how I initially got into it was I was watching a video from Dragon LZ. And he, we were talking about it. Essentially, sort of like I think what I was trying to do at that time was I was just trying to get some friends, and so I was talking to Dragon Ball Z in his comment section because I was really like into his series and what he was doing at that specific point in time, and so he obviously thought he invited me to like the Dragon Ball group and whatever, and because of that sort of thing, it sort of gave me like a lot more of a range from meeting those people as to what the Dragon Ball community was like. And honestly, that's really how I got into it from there. Like everything else is set in stone.
Yeah, I think that in terms of how you, like you said, how you really got started with Dragon Ball. I'm also a fan. People who don't know, I'm also a fan of Dragon Ball Z, and I'm also a fan of the manga and anime. So it's really cool to know your perspective on how Dragon Ball kind of how it affected you. How it's affected your life. And it's like for me, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I found it at a young age. I think my backstory with it is that I found the first couple CDs of the Saiyan saga at my local Blockbuster when Blockbuster was a thing, and so I basically I bought or I rented some Dragon Ball Z CDs, DVDs. And then I watched those, and then I was like, "Oh man, this is cool." And then I started getting more into it, and then my mom bought me, I think she bought me Dragon Ball Budokai, the game for PS2. And then that's when I really got more into Dragon Ball because of the game and then because of the DVDs of my Blockbuster. So that's something I can resonate with, growing up with something like that. So, and also being part of that community. I'm not too big in that community, but I definitely can. It's a strong one. And that's something I can appreciate about it. And since we're on the topic, one of your most popular series on your channel is a series called Dragon Ball Z Distortion. So that's really
Dragon Ball Distortion, yes.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Distortion. So when coming to Dragon Ball Distortion, and what kind of like inspired you to make the series and make it like your own thing? Making your own kind of creation, like take on the Dragon Ball characters and the Dragon Ball world.
So it's funny. I doubt anyone is going to expect how this whole thing started, but Dragon Ball Distortion was never meant to be a series when it first came out. The very first video that I did. So this is how it all started. I wanted to do a competition between me and Dragon Ball Z because me at the time, I'm first starting out to animation and I'm like super cocky, whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, well, right now I got, my stop motions and whatever, and I can do it. And I challenged D and Z to a competition, like a stop motion competition of seeing who could do the best stop motion with the two characters and stuff. And so my video was going to be Gohan versus Vegito, and then sort of what ended up happening from there was I ended up putting in like a lot of story into the video because I had so many different ideas as to how I can actually make Gohan strong enough at that point to be able to actually be able to fight Vegito, like because obviously the two different characters are really are really vastly different. And so to even be able to have Vegito existing in the time, I decided to actually go way more like lore, like into the lore of the show in order to keep Vegito have a reason for why he's still fused. And at that point in time, for Dragon Ball, the manga the continuity with the Potara earrings was that the Potara earrings would last forever. The Potara would last forever. So it doesn't matter how long it didn't matter. It's not like what they did in Super at the time where they changed it so that the Potara earrings only lasted an hour. Jesus Christ, that literally destroyed my entire lore of the show. And then so the idea was that Vegito never defused in the middle of the fight with Majin Buu, and it sort of had that similar sort of presence to the story of Vegito in Dragon Ball Multiverse. Mm-hmm. And so after that stuff had taken place, like after everything was set in stone, I sort of had the Gohan and Vegito fight happen, and I had the whole like story lore of how this world of Dragon Ball is, and putting that into the characters and whatever. And I ended off with the cliffhanger, which I don't remember why I ended off with the cliffhanger, but I remember having done that. And honestly, I'll just say this: there was a lot of issues with me with the actual first episode for it being supposed to be a competitive video, because I was getting into stop motion for the very first time, and then I see on Stop Motion Studio there's this thing here that's a green screen. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this would be great. Like green screen. No one at that point in time really had a lot of green screen going on in their videos. So I initially just started doing that because I felt I can be more different. I'll have more control over the backgrounds and everything which could take place. Mm-hmm. And then obviously over time, like I stopped using it as much because I was able to focus a little bit more on that, like on different, backdrops and things like that. It essentially became a thing where it was getting in the way of how I wanted to go and animate stuff that was on the screen. And so because of that, it was sort of being a little bit of a hindrance. I put that off for other videos, and so essentially with this, I'm sorry, I'm going off right now, but the main point is, to answer your question, is that Dragon Ball Distortion just all started off because of the competition between me and D&Z. I don't even think D&Z put out his video like to go up against episode 1, but I mean, let's be real, he probably would have won that whole thing anyway, because like I said, at the time of it was doing stop motion, I just was not into I just wasn't as good.
Okay. I also feel like that what I really like about your style of animation is that what I've noticed while we watching a lot of your videos is that, I mean, like, you obviously have improved over time each year, every time you post something. But I feel like what I like about your story is that even though it's like your own take and no kind of like a what if kind of thing, it's still consistent. It's still consistent, and it's also still like in tone. The tone's consistent. That's what I'm trying to say. It's still like in the same realm of like when you're watching it, you're like, this is like, it's just like you're watching a Dragon Ball episode, especially stop motion. And that's what I really like about the writing of it. So I guess going on to, let's see, my next question is essentially since you put a lot of effort into your videos, like whether that's you making backdrops or doing your stuff, doing your effects, how would you say for somebody who wants to start out making Dragon Ball content or any type of stop motion content, what kind of tips would you give to somebody who's just starting out?
I say this as a tip specifically for all sorts of animation. The thing that's honestly really good, that the thing that I honestly recommend that you put your most into the stuff, is you work on your anticipation. Like for anything of whatever you're animating, you have to exaggerate the movements to make it clear what the characters are doing. And when you're exaggerating the movements, say the character is animating a punch, like you're animating the character and they're throwing out a punch. You wouldn't have the guy just throw out his fist or whatever just to throw a punch. Like you have the guy, you animate the guy having his having his hand all the way back, moving his hand back before he actually goes in and throws the punch. And so that anticipation would help. And also people would actually feel the weight of that punch of which they're animating. Mm-hmm. You can also do that with the jumping. See, the characters would squat down first before they actually go in and jump. Or perhaps if you're doing kicks or things like that, you would obviously charge the kick, have them move their foot backwards before it gets thrown up. Anticipation is key in order to translating what exactly is going on the screen, and it's something that I see a lot of people not putting as much work into. And honestly, if they did, it would make their animations 10 times better. Work on anticipation, guys. Please.
Okay, I think that's some good advice. I guess that's some advice I would like to give is just practice. Just practice your FPS. Figure out what your which kind of FPS works best for you, and also figure out what is your limitations. Know what your limits are, at least at the moment, because everybody has a limit. Everybody has something that they can't are able to do. So do not worry about trying to be like the next person, or trying to be like this person. You know, you can be inspired by said person, but you really gotta focus on animating and doing stuff the way that you feel like will represent you. So that's my personal advice.
I'd like to bring in one quote, and this was by Ray Bradbury, and he essentially he was in an interview, and this has I know this sounds completely off topic, but stick with me here. He talked about how when he was initially creating his book, how he had like the Fahrenheit 451. He initially made like 20 bad books or whatever before he actually managed to create a good book. What he's saying is that with each, and what basically he's saying was that with each mistake, with each mishap which takes place, you learn what it is that you do, like that you're doing wrong. So what I'm saying is, like what Moose is, you're saying practice, and to add to that, I'm saying don't be afraid to make mistakes, because those mistakes are also the building blocks of what is going to help you and your animation improve.
Right. Which I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I like I said, I 100% agree with that, and I definitely think that, you know, building those stepping stones of practice and just don't be afraid to make those mistakes, like you said, will definitely make you a better creator and a better animator.
Yeah.
And speaking of like with your videos and everything, you're also known in the community as a voice actor, known for your voices for Frieza. Yes. Like one of your biggest voices is Frieza.
I don't even want to be your favorite tyrant.
So you know, Frieza is like one of your bigger voices, known for you're known for. So for people, and this is kind of similar to the last question, but I guess it's kind of also two-parter kind of question. But the first one is who is your favorite person to voice? And the second question is essentially, what would you give advice to people who want to start out voice acting?
Okay, so yeah, I can. Okay, so voice acting is. Okay, so sorry. What was the first part of the question again? Like, how did I get? Was it how I got into voice acting, or
the first question essentially it says, who is your favorite person to voice? What advice would you give to people who want to start voice acting?
Okay, so yeah, my favorite person to voice is Frieza. I mean, it sort of comes natural. He's just an all-around type of character that gets to be all smug and sarcastic and essentially be any negative part or whatever. Like it gets to be, you know, expressed within whichever character. Mm-hmm. And as for people, like how they get into voice acting, so. It honestly comes down to, like we said prior to, with the stop motion, how you got to get you gotta practice. You can go. It sounds funny, but honestly, you can just go around. You can act like a complete idiot with your voice. You can just do
all these crazy things. You can bring your voice all high.
You can bring the voice all low, and then figure out what exactly your range is. Like, you figure out your range, and then you figure out, you look at characters, and then you see what exactly you're able to do. Now, I see a lot of people, they get discouraged from voice acting because the characters of which they want to go into voice, they wish they could go and sound like this character. They can't always necessarily pull it off. And I'm not going to say that because you're not capable of going and doing the suppression, that means you're a bad voice actor. No, it just means that it's not within your natural speaking ability of which to be able to project that sort of impression of a character of which you're trying to voice. It all comes, everyone with their voices, and this is really different from a lot of different things, because you can't just get it with hard work. You're born to be able to do certain things, like from the get-go, like what your vocal range is, what you are capable of doing, and what you're not capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And how you go about trying to figure out what you can and cannot do, adjusting your strengths and your weaknesses, and all these certain things for the characters of which you want to go. It like all comes down to practice and stuff or whatever. For as an example, just recently I found out from my good friend Tristan Scott, the Dub, that I was capable of doing a Trunks. That he thinks I can do Trunks, and I didn't think about this at all like before doing Trunks. But and so it kind of just came about like to me about being able to do Trunks, and all I have to do is like act all sad and repressed, and everything, my entire future and stuff is getting destroyed by the androids. And so the character of which you can voice, all I'm saying this to you right now, is probably right under your nose. You just need to go and find it. You go and find this character. You'll just keep looking around. You can figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. So and don't give up. You can do whichever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like with voice acting is like you said, being able to know what your voice range is and being able to know what kind of voices you feel like the most comfortable with. One of my favorite voices to do, even though it's just kind of like my voice, is Captain America. I really like doing Captain America. I also really like voicing one. It was like what was the character? It's been so long. I really like voicing this detective character in Mag Studios' video.
And you're also good at voicing Dende.
Yeah, and I also voiced Dende for you. And so I voiced Dende for you. So yeah, like doing like little voices and stuff like doing voices for people's videos is just really fun, and I really like doing voice acting. So if any of you guys really just need help with voice acting, go to Starblast for sure, because Starblast has a lot of advice.
Hey, don't cut yourself short, Moose. You're good at doing your stuff as well. Like everyone can go to Moose as well if they need any voice acting or doing any sort of like stuff at all. I mean, Moose, you have a lot more range than you give yourself credit for, guy.
Oh, thank you. I think that also has to do a bit with I actually took in a lot of different types of classes for that kind of stuff in college and everything. So that's actually kind of helped me also become a better actor and voice actor. So
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. There's little classes and stuff like that. So like there's stuff for that. But going on to next question is essentially since the last video I think you uploaded was like your last stop motion was your Yamcha vs Vegeta video, which I really liked.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that video, by the way.
Thank you.
And so essentially, what other videos are you planning on making, or is there anything you can share about what kind of videos you're going to be making in the future?
See, I'm at a point right now where I don't. Okay, so this is a secondary thing, and it's honestly like really something personal. So for all of those people who are asking, where is Dragon Ball Distortion? This thing pops up all the time. People want to know like when the next episode of Dragon Ball Distortion is. And my God, I cannot blame them. I've put that video, that second part off for like a really, really long time. And honestly, like, so what I'm sort of working on that right now, but also I'm trying to figure something else out. So one of the characters in Distortion right now that I'm working on is Broly, but it's not. If you watch my show, it's not exactly like the same Broly. Of which you're familiar with. Go watch my channel if you want to know like more about that. But essentially, with that character, I decided I needed to actually figure out his backstory and write that out first before I continue on with anything. I've just been sort of hitting a lot of writer's blocks. Like I've hit writer's block of what exactly has been said, what exactly hasn't said, what would make sense, what wouldn't make sense, because I want to essentially understand. And if I want to understand like the backstory of him, of who this character is right now, I need to be able to put out his backstory and show why he would be certain ways like that. So that's one thing I really want to go and work on. In a sense, Dragon Ball Distortion. Whenever you go and put in a series, like and this is for anyone in general. If you're going to go and make a series, what I've noticed is, like, even if you have the commitment to go and work on a series in the first place, you want to go and put in your inspiration, you want to go put in whatever into this series and make these amazing moments. What it honestly does is it takes a lot of commitment, and I know it's hard to imagine, like, how to know how long your commitment is going to last for a series in general. Because I feel like a lot of people, they'd go and put out their own series, and then they wouldn't go back to it because they're not as committed to it. They want to go work on other projects. They want to go express different sorts of passions of which they have into going and making other stop motions. And one of the things of which I have, because and it, like I said, with Dragon Ball Distortion, I didn't even plan on making it into a series in the first place. It was all just sort of like a competitive thing, and then it was just a random decision of which I did, like to go and turn it into a series because I felt I saw some potential into what I can do for Gohan and Vegito, and essentially other videos of which I want to go and do. I'll tell you what they are, but the thing is I'm not as much working on those videos specifically right now because I have Distortion, and it hinders. It's sort of a big responsibility on my end, right. And it's always on the back of my mind whenever I go and I animate stuff. I'm always thinking, oh my god, well, this stuff right here, why am I waiting, like, not putting out Distortion, or like, people are waiting and stuff like that. And so it sort of just goes off onto me, like, not exactly going and doing anything at all because I know if I'm doing that, it just sort of goes like, hey, you need to go and work on this right now. You can't be doing this. It's always lingering on the back of my head. It's in my conscience. The videos of which I want to go and do are essentially maybe a second thing to Dragon Ball Evolved, like a sequel to it, which that would be something that's been something I've been wanting to do for a little bit. And also, I'd really like to make a second part to Dragon Ball Skits, which was a video I did 3 or 4 years ago. It was just pretty much like Dragon Ball comedy and stuff in there. And there was also this other video, which was an idea that was pitched to me by Tristan Scott, and that's just it's a video that I want to go and do, but also I've sort of put off to the side because I didn't really get it out on time. I'm putting out a lot of different reasons to why I'm not uploading. But the point is like that I sort of want to say with this is that each and everything of what you do, you got to have the commitment in order to go and do that. A series is going to be lingering on the side of your head if you go and you're not prepared of doing it. And I feel like that's part of the reason why a lot of these videos, a lot of these things I put out haven't exactly had a consistent upload schedule. And so I hope that people can take away from this and understand that maybe it would actually be better if you went and did your own side videos, like different separate projects that don't exactly connect, or maybe you can connect them if you decide that you actually can do it in a certain way to make it all like the premise of what makes another video which you upload on your channel good and entertaining. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, those are the videos of which I have planned out, and I think that's it. Right back over to you, Moose.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what else you come up with, and whether that's Distortion, whether that's something else, entirely. I just really just like I said in the beginning, I really enjoy your content, and I think you definitely got a real strong talent when it comes to stop motion animation, and when it comes to writing, and when it comes to just animation in general. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and you definitely deserve your audience. Which, speaking of which, going on to the last question here, is essentially, what would you like to say to your fan base, to your audience?
Honestly, it's just, hey, guys, I'm sorry, the video's not out. I'm still working on it. Please don't kill me.
That's fair. That's... And with that being said, thank you, Starblast, for joining me for the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, So if you guys want to check out Starblast's channel, check out his Instagram, and all that will be in the description. Any other social medias that he has will also be in the description. If you want to check me out, my Instagram and my Twitter will also be in the description as well. Make sure you subscribe if you want to check out more interviews and check out more stop motion videos from me. And make sure, let's again, check out some Starblast's stuff on his channel. And thanks again, Starblast, for joining me.